again this week. In this week's video, I'm going to talk about the economic cost of the coronavirus that are just now beginning to be shown in the economy with more numbers that came out, what it means for you, why it's important, what it kind of means for the long term, and all that. I'll also answer your questions about finance, stocks, investments, coronavirus. Last week I answered questions about real estate. The week before, I answered questions about cryptocurrencies, pot stocks, and stuff like that. So if you have questions as you're watching this, please let me know in the comment section. I'll answer them when I get to them. But for now, I'm going to start off talking in today's video about the horrifically bad economic news that's coming out in the last couple days, last couple weeks, frankly. And that's likely going to continue coming out. Please, again, if you're just coming in, let me know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, I'll answer those about any topic. But for now, let's get to today's video. So, in the last couple weeks, I've done videos each week on mainly on the unemployment numbers in the United States, just horrible numbers. Up to 17 million as of today, and tomorrow it's likely to go over 22-ish million if estimates are correct. If estimates are not correct, probably higher, probably closer to 24 million Americans will be unemployed. And this will be just in the last month. In the last couple of videos, I've talked about kind of why I think the market is being manipulated by the Federal Reserve and stuff like that. Today's video, I'm going to talk about some very specific stuff about the horrible economic news that's coming out. But before we get to that, I want to recap a bit on some of the things we touched on in the last videos. So not only did we talk about market manipulation in the last set of videos, we also talked about what's going to happen in the real estate market. Stacy last week asked a question about the real estate market and is the real estate bubble going to pop? Essentially what I said is, I don't know. Do I think things nationwide are probably overvalued? To a degree, yes. To a small degree, not nearly as bad as in 2006, 2007 time period. There are pockets like San Francisco, New York, Silicon Valley, those kind of areas, probably LA and San Diego to a smaller degree, that are incredibly overvalued, but they've been incredibly overvalued for years. So what I also talked about when it came to the real estate was, yes, I said I don't know if the bubble's going to pop. In my opinion, things aren't as overvalued as they were back in the last recession. But what I was more worried about was these banks not getting paid. They, again, I'm going to just go over this briefly, but they operate on what's called the float, this middle ground right here. So they can lend, or they can take loans out at, let's say, 0.5%, and they loan you money at 1%. They make what's in between here called the spread or the float. What I talked about then, actually I think I talked about this a little bit both of the last 2 weeks, is that the real estate market in general should be fine, but it's going to come down to what's happened to the banks. Because most banks operate on, or all banks operate on this spread, they make very little profit. If they aren't getting cash flow in on a consistent basis, that means they're not making money. That means they don't have as much money for loans. That means credit could tighten. If credit tightens while we're dealing with this coronavirus stuff, it's going to bring the economy to a screeching halt. Right now we're kind of going through a slow kind of grinding of the economy. But if credit becomes unavailable, the economy will just essentially stop like that, because businesses will not have capital to operate. I talked about the over leverage of most businesses worldwide. By my estimates, 80% of businesses, and this is researching at this point, last week it was just under 2,000, now it's just under 2,500 companies worldwide in I think 42 countries now. 80+% of companies have a lot of debt relative to the cash on the balance sheet, and a lot of debt compared to their cash flow levels. So if these businesses are seeing lower cash flow, which pretty much almost 100% of businesses are right now, unless they're 100% online, then the banks aren't making, or then these people aren't making money, which means they can't pay as much to the banks for their loans, their car loans, their business loans, their credit cards, their whatever. They can't pay as much for that. So when that happens, again, this goes back to the spread. This is important. If the banks aren't getting paid, almost, and I read an article this morning that more than 2 million people, according to, I don't remember which bank it was, but more than 2 million people, I think it might have been Bank of America, JP Morgan, one of the two. Already 2 million people who own mortgages through that bank, whichever, again, I don't remember the exact name of the bank, have already applied for forbearance, which means they won't have to pay for 6 months, 12 months, whatever the terms are. But again, if the banks are getting paid for 6 or 12 months and 2 million people have already applied for that, while unemployment rates are still going up by millions of people unemployed every week, things are just going to continue to get worse. So that's kind of where I want to lead off today with that short recap, because banks have reported their first quarter earnings, or have begun reporting their first quarter earnings. JP Morgan, I think it's Citibank, and Wells Fargo. 3 of the biggest banks in the world. And I'm looking here to make sure. Got some notes here, so please bear with me. That is not it. Okay, the names of the banks don't matter. I couldn't find the exact banks. The banks of the names don't matter. 3 of the biggest banks in the world, with the most assets in the world, with also probably the most loans in the world. They started reporting their earnings yesterday for the first quarter. First quarter covers January, February, March. So most of this quarter's numbers are from January and February, which don't even account the United States for the coronavirus lockdown. And these banks reported earnings that were down about 50%, 45 to 50% on average in one quarter. Again, most of this quarter wasn't even, people weren't locked down. January, February in the United States, people weren't locked down. Lockdown in the United States didn't come to a great degree until mid-March. So essentially 2 to 3 weeks only is what these banks' earnings report for this first quarter. Meaning only 2 to 3 weeks of this lockdown numbers, and their earnings were already down 50%. What that leads to is JP Morgan and Wells Fargo specifically, again, 2 of the largest banks in the world, 2 of the biggest banks in the United States. They do a huge bulk of the loan in the United States for everything. Cars, home loans, business loans, all that kind of stuff. They also, on top of saying that their earnings were down 50%, combined, they put reserves in their financial reports for up to $10 billion of bad debt. So what that means is the bad debt is people not paying their loans. So the banks, again, only 2 to 3 weeks essentially into this, are reserving more than $10 billion for expected bad debts that are going to either have to be deferred or written off or just kind of go away. If they're written off, if they're deferred, that means the bank's not getting paid. If they're written off completely or written down to a lower amount, that means the bank gets paid a lower amount. But this goes back to 2 million people already talking about forbearance, or have already applied for forbearance. So that's at least 2 million people who aren't going to be paying their, let's say, home loans for, again, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever their agreement was. If these banks' earnings are down 50% with only 2 to 3 weeks of data from this coronavirus lockdown, this, frankly, it's even worse than I was expecting. Yes, I know banks operate on a little money. Yes, I know they operate on the spread, and if they're not getting paid, then they're not, the credit markets are going to tighten pretty rapidly. I didn't think the earnings would be down this much. I didn't think they would have this much in bad reserves or bad debt reserves. So why am I telling you this? How is this important for you? So this is important for you, not only because if these banks aren't getting paid, the overall credit market tightens, which makes it harder for people to get loans, for business to get loans, for businesses to operate worldwide. These banks control assets worldwide. This is also important for you because it led JP Morgan also on the earnings call 2 days ago, I think, to announce that they are no longer taking mortgage applications for people unless they have an above 700 credit score and they need 20% down on the mortgages. So not only will this tighten the market, this is also rapidly tightening the mortgage market and the real estate market as well. I'm a licensed real estate agent in the state of Florida. So if people can't get a house unless they have an above 700 credit score and 20% down, that eliminates probably, by my estimates, probably 85 to 90% of home buyers, just like that. 700 credit score most people will have. 20% down most people will not have. Again, this is all combined. So if JP Morgan is expecting people to have a 700 credit score, whatever, that's reasonable. 20% down, while millions and millions and millions of people are losing their jobs, while millions and millions of people are have either lost their jobs or are taking lower pay. Not many people are going to be able to do that right now. So what this will do is this will tighten up the mortgage markets like this, or really fast. And other banks have announced these kind of measures too. I just used JP Morgan because they're the biggest and the most well known. So other banks have done this as well. So not only will this tighten the overall economy, this is tightening the mortgage market and the home buying and selling market. Again, this will happen pretty rapidly because, again, this will shut off about probably 85 to 90% of home buyers just immediately will not be able to buy with the 20% down, especially with all the stuff going on and people losing their jobs and stuff that I just talked about. What this also means is that the banks will get probably less money because they'll be shutting off one of their resources. These banks are also raising cash, as much cash as they possibly can, to kind of prepare for what they either think or know is coming in terms of economics. Things are going to very rapidly tighten if this trend continues, and again, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't continue. I'm not a macro guy. I talked about this in the last video. I'm not a macro guy at all. But I have studied an enormous amount of financial and world history, and this is kind of the trend. Once things kind of go in terms of tightening, they go fast. So what happens then? Let's say within the next month, mortgages completely come to a stop. The banks are preparing for an absolute horror quarter in the next quarter, which I should preface that. So these first quarter numbers are about to be real bad for most companies. If these banks are any indicator, and they probably are, of the economic cost of this coronavirus lockdown in the United States, and frankly worldwide, the second quarter is going to be even worse, because that will be if we go into April, May, June. So if we go into June and companies start reporting their second quarter earnings June, July timeframe, and we're still under lockdown, the earnings are going to be horrific. Again, I talked about this in the last two videos. 70% of US GDP is based on consumption, meaning people buying stuff. Retail numbers came out today. They're down 8.7. They went to negative 8.7%, or they fell by 8.7% from the last quarter. The previous record was something like 0.7%, or negative 0.7%. We are negative 8.7%. Best Buy today announced they are furloughing 51,000 employees because they can't pay them anymore because nobody's coming into the stores. I have another article up here. An aviation expert says airlines would be better off shutting down, and he gives the example of, I think it's American Airlines, losing $100 million a day right now, and Delta Airlines losing $60 million a day because they can't fly. But they still have costs right now. They're still kind of operating on a skeleton crew basis. They're still kind of operating, but nobody's flying. So they're not making any money. They're just losing, again, $100 million a day, I think, American Airlines, and $60 million a day at Delta. So this expert says these airlines and airports overall would be better just shutting down completely right now. Frankly, I agree, not only for the health perspective. When I was flying back from Puerto Rico, when this wasn't even that bad, or people weren't as worried from it, I was standing around looking at the airport in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I was like, everybody's freaking out about going to like restaurants and stuff like that. I'm more worried about getting coronavirus in an airport where there's thousands or tens of thousands of people very closely packed. So from a health perspective, it makes sense to me. But again, from an economic perspective, if the airlines are shut down for, let's say, 2 months, yes, they'll save money. Yes, they're getting bailed out from the federal government. I think it's $25 billion. That'll frankly probably go up quite a bit by the time this is over. But if the airports and airlines shut down and states remain shut down in the United States, this is all related to consumption. Again, airlines, essentially you're paying to go somewhere to do something. Let's say you're going to a conference, or you're going to eat some restaurants, you're going to travel. So, for example, tomorrow, today's the 15th, right? So tomorrow, I was supposed to be going to the Philippines, to Manila and Baguio City, to do a speaking event on marketing in front of 200 people, but we are also going to put on other events in the Philippines. So I potentially, me and my team, lost out on not only the opportunity to go to the Philippines, flight costs, we lost out on an opportunity to make revenue, we lost out on an opportunity to help people, we lost out on the opportunity to eat at restaurants, stay at hotels, all this stuff. Think about this exponentially, not just one person like me. Think about this worldwide. If airlines and the economy remain shut down, tourist industry, the entire tourist industry is going to be hammered. Hotels, restaurants, those kind of things, just going to be hammered. Cruise lines, going to be hammered. Airbnb is probably getting hammered right now. Uber, probably getting hammered right now. AMC, the largest theater chain in the United States, is in talks to potentially file for bankruptcy. And again, we are just about a month into United States lockdown. I said last week that by my estimates, again, after researching almost 2,500 companies in 40 different countries worldwide, by my research, most companies probably on average would have about 3 months of cash flow before they are in serious trouble. I said watch the 3-month mark. If we're still locked down by June, July timeframe in the United States, massive, not only unemployment is coming, but massive business failings are going to happen because they won't have enough cash. This is what we're seeing with the airlines already. This is what we're seeing with AMC already, because people can't go to the movies, obviously. Nobody's removed. Pretty much all film production has been shut down for movies. All TV film production has been shut down. So this not only will hurt AMC and the TV stations in the short term, but in the long term, let's say Disney, behemoth, worldwide behemoth, everybody knows Disney. If their parks are shut down, if their movies are shut down, if their TV shows are shut down for, let's say, 3 months, even they are going to be in massive trouble. They, I think, furloughed. I live in Tampa, so we get a lot of news about Orlando and Disney World. They have either begun furloughing a bunch of their employees or are about to start. I think that was from their parks. So this, again, this tightening, this goes back to this tightening, and I'm sorry about this. I'm trying to make this as easy to understand as possible, and I hope it's easy to understand. But this is some super complex stuff, but it's all very important and very intertwined. People think the economy is black and white, and I talked about this a little bit in the last video. Yes, people should be able to defer their mortgages. Yes, people should be their mortgage payments. Yes, people should be able to forbear their payments for cars, credit cards, homes, all that kind of stuff. Yes, that's the moral right thing to do, but it's not as black as white. And that if these banks and these companies aren't getting paid, they cannot stay open. I talked about this in last week's video, and again, we're already seeing this. AMC, largest theater chain in the United States, might be in the world, getting ready to file for bankruptcy. So what does that mean? Does that mean they're going to go away? No, not necessarily. So most people, when they think of bankruptcy, they think of businesses just kind of disappearing and going away. What they would be filing for is, I think it was Chapter 11, reorganization bankruptcy. So they would be essentially reworking their debt covenants and their debt payments and the terms they have to pay, the amount they have to pay, the interest rate, all that kind of stuff, whatever terms they can come up with. And they might be selling assets to raise cash. They might be selling some of their properties, stuff like that. They will not probably go away, again, unless this goes on for 3, 6, 8 months, however long it ends up going on. But again, this is only the first month, and they're getting ready to file for bankruptcy. This is going to get progressively worse the longer we are kind of in this area where we are locked down, essentially. The longer this goes on, and sorry, I'm looking for more information here that I want to share with you on this. So I think I hit most of everything. This, as we go on, is not only going to affect us as individuals and our families and putting food on the table and potentially losing houses when this is over, losing cars, going further and further into debt. It's not only going to affect us personally, but again, it's going to affect the entire banking system, how we get credit, how we pay debt, how we expand our economy, how we expand business operations. It's probably going to cause massive, well, we're already dealing with massive unemployment, but insanely just crazy to think about unemployment. When this kind of started, there was an estimate that I saw that said if this goes on for, XYZ months, I don't remember the amount of months, this could lead to 32% unemployment. I thought that was freaking crazy, of course, because even in the Great Depression, the United States didn't have 32% unemployment. Right now, today, I would put the numbers, again, based on my research, that the United States is already between 12 and 15% unemployment rate, which puts us at the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. Tomorrow's numbers will come out for the unemployment. Again, probably in the 5 to 7 million range. That would put the unemployment rate at around 15 to 18%. The last time we saw that was, again, the Great Depression. I keep seeing people online talking about how this is going to cause a recession. At first, I thought it was going to cause a recession. I don't know what the technical definition of a depression is, frankly, because we haven't had one in 100 years. But I think this, in the short term, will lead to a depression in consumer costs, consumer spending, and that will lead to a depression in terms of, probably in a technical term, a depression in terms of the amount of cash people have, what banks are doing, what they're lending, what they're able to lend. It will, again, tighten everything. I'm reading Ray Dalio's book, Big Debt Crisis, right now, frankly, so I can better understand what's going on. Because, again, I've studied an enormous amount of world history, enormous amount of financial history, and I've said this in every video I've done. I cannot think of a time in world history where the economy just completely stops like it's doing now. I'm reading that book by Ray Dalio, who's probably one of the smartest people in the finance world, to try to better understand what's going on. Because, frankly, I do not understand. Literally, the other person I talk to is, what's going on in the market? Why is the market going up by 10% or whatever? Or why is the market up 30%, let's say, in the past 2-3 weeks, when the economic news has gotten horrifically bad and the health news has gotten really bad? I just don't. I don't know. I don't understand what's going on unless the market is being manipulated right now, which I think it is. Again, as I talked in my last couple of videos, I don't understand what's going on. Even if that is happening, though, the market manipulation, that doesn't explain why when 3 of the largest banks in the world report earnings down 50%, historic unemployment, second quarter numbers, first quarter numbers have just begun being reported and they're going to be bad. Second quarter numbers are going to be even worse. I keep seeing more and more reports about how we're going to be under lockdown for potentially up to 18 months in the United States. To some degree of social distancing, they might relax it to some degree on whatever. But in terms of going back to quote-unquote normal, as in going to sporting events and going to movie theaters, I've been seeing reports of anywhere to 6 to 12 months. Or 6 to 18 months, sorry, from when this started. So let's say March. So that puts us 6 months is April, May, June, July, August. That puts us September. 18 months puts us September next year. So this, again, I talk about this in every video. Raise cash as much as you can. Stay healthy. Raise cash. If you need to sell stuff online, if you on eBay, if you need to build an online course, if you need to build an online video course, if you need to become an online entrepreneur, quote unquote, you should think about doing that. Because again, I don't see, again, I'm not a macro guy, I'm not a health expert, but I read from a wide range of sources. I'm not seeing anything. Yes, President Trump wants to open up the country. I don't think it's still said May 1st. I don't think he's updated that time frame. That's not going to happen. So when are we going to open up? Don't know. But again, if we get to that 3-month mark, if we're already seeing businesses start to have issues 1 month into this, wait until we're in, again, let's say June, we're still locked down, wait, and it's going to be even worse, horrifically worse in terms of business, economics. Again, I say this in every video as well. I'm not talking about the health aspects of this. Yes, they're super important. Yes, I understand them. Yes, I understand why we're doing everything we're doing. But my expertise is not a health arena. That's why I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the economic arena, investments, finance, because that is my expertise. People seem to want to only talk about either the health issues or the economic issues. Hey Deep, how are you? You have any questions, let me know. I don't understand why more people aren't talking about both. Because yes, if health issues, if we don't flatten the curve like we have done in the United States, if we don't do that stuff, I understand. A lot of people are going to die. I understand that, and that's horribly bad. But you can't just completely shut the economy off either. Because you're beginning to see what's happening. AMC, largest theater chain in the United States, possibly in the world, getting ready to file for bankruptcy 1 month into this. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, I think it was Citibank, 3 of the largest banks in the world, tightening the mortgage market, increasing their reserves for bad debts, which means they will essentially lose up to $10 billion is what they're saying with that. And their earnings are down 50% with only 2 to 3 weeks in the quarter of the coronavirus lockdown. Again, if we get to June, July, and we're still locked down, massive business closures forever. We're not just talking about a temporary thing. I got this question last time. I think it was from Faisal in Spain, because they're doing a lot of temporary layoffs over there in Spain, which they're doing here. I think they're calling furloughs here in the United States. A lot of these terms they're using kind of interchangeably, depending on where you get the information from. But the temporary layoffs, if this goes on for 3 months or longer, will become permanent layoffs because the business will likely go out of business, unfortunately. I don't know how to emphasize that enough. is, yes, the health aspects are incredibly important. Yes, people's lives are incredibly important. But you can't just completely stop the economy like we're doing. You cannot. For, again, some incredibly large businesses. I was reading an article the other day that Coca-Cola, one of the largest companies in the world, is starting to have issues with their supply chain creaking because they're not able to get the supplies they want and the ingredients they want in the quantity they want. This is one of the largest companies in the world. So if they are going to have issues, imagine what's going to happen to your mom and pop restaurant down the street, or the largest theater chain in the United States, or the car dealership down the street who people aren't buying cars. So what's going to happen to them? Nobody is talking about this. And again, like I talked about last time, it makes me angry because people need to know and need to understand this kind of stuff, because it's not just one or the other. It's not just we have to take care of everybody's health, but we shut down the economy. It can't be, or it shouldn't be like that, because that's not how things work. People still have to pay bills. They still have to feed their families. Again, let's say their bills are just completely gone. They still have to have money to pay for food. And if they're not paying their bills to the banks and the companies that own their debt, those companies, like we talked about at the beginning, are going to have less money. They're already not that profitable. And the debt markets and the mortgage markets and all these markets and the financial markets in general are just going to come to a screeching halt and just going to completely tighten up. That's when things are going to get, frankly, really bad. When and if that happens, things are going to get really bad. Because, again, nobody will be able to get credit. Nobody will be able to pay off their debt, because tens of millions of people will be unemployed. And again, that number will probably, tomorrow's number will probably go from 17 million in the last 3 weeks in the United States to potentially 22 to 24 million in the last month of unemployed. And this is happening worldwide. I'm specifically talking about the United States because their government releases the most data. Most other countries aren't, at least that I have seen, have not released this kind of unemployment data in mass. I've seen a little bit from Spain, that was a couple weeks ago, a little bit from the UK, that was a couple weeks ago, in terms of unemployment. Other than that, I haven't seen too much. So the reason I'm talking about mostly the United States when it comes to this is because they release the most information. I don't like speculating. I don't like playing on people's fears. I want to tell you the truth as much as I can, backed up with data, and what's either happening now or what's probably going to happen unless things change rapidly. And again, I don't think they're going to change anytime soon, unfortunately, in terms of the coronavirus stuff, because I'm not seeing anyone in the United States talk about, or they're beginning to talk about how the economy is pretty much crumbling. But I'm not seeing anybody talking about the other, just completely opening things up. They're talking about doing it slowly. But again, if, let's say, everything in the United States opens up tomorrow, are you going to fly on a plane? Are you going to go to a restaurant? Are you going to go to an NFL football game tomorrow? I highly doubt that. Probably less than 50% of people, I would probably say probably a lot higher than that, would be comfortable going out en masse to a place like a mall or a theater or an airplane or a sporting event, because they would be worried about getting coronavirus, rightly. So even if we were to open everything up tomorrow, worldwide, it wouldn't still fix the economy's problems, because people will still be afraid that they're either going to get the coronavirus, or that they're going to get it and they're going to end up in the hospital, or they're going to get it, show no symptoms, and get other people sick. So, frankly, I don't know what the answer is. Again, I'm not nearly as smart as somebody like Ray Dalio or the people like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan. I'm not nearly as smart as some of these people. All I'm telling you, I'm doing these videos to kind of help educate you on what you should be doing. Again, raise cash as much as you can. Stay healthy. Raise cash. Again, I talk about this in every video, but I'm going to keep doing it. Raise cash, Sell stuff on eBay if you need to. Get rid of stuff in your house. Get a side hustle on Fiverr or Upwork or something like that. Build an online business. Do anything you can. Everybody has a skill set. Even my 2-year-old daughter has a skill set. Anybody can work to make cash online. I'm not going to say it's easy, because it's not. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, like some people will say, just put your stuff online and you're going to make a lot of money. That's not how it works. But if you start working towards it, you can build an audience, and then maybe at some point in the next 1, 2, 3 months, you can make money. If you can do that, I would do that. Again, raise as much cash as you can, because we are completely unprecedented times. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long this is going to last. Stay healthy. Again, not only for your sake, so you can work and be productive and help your kids with schoolwork or whatever you're doing, improving yourself, learning, whatever you're doing, but also so you don't get your loved ones sick either. I'm going to stay on for a couple more minutes. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. But I hope this has helped. I hope this has been valuable. Again, frankly, I don't like talking about this stuff because I'm a happy person. I'm an optimistic person, pretty much 100% of the time. But I feel like I have to tell you guys this kind of stuff because, again, nobody is talking about the economic issues. Very few people are talking about the economic issues and how bad it already is and how bad it's likely to get worldwide if these economies continue to not be working properly, frankly. Again, I don't know what the answer is. If we open everything up tomorrow, worldwide, shut the lockdown off, more people would get sick, and more people, and frankly, I don't think, probably 80% of people still wouldn't go out to places like restaurants and theaters and sporting events. I think probably less than 80% or more, fewer than 80% of people, fewer than 20% of people would actually do those things en masse and not be worried about getting these videos, or about getting the coronavirus either themselves or passing it on to a loved one. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just trying to help you hopefully better understand. Hopefully I'm explaining this stuff well enough. And it makes sense, frankly, because, again, this is very important stuff. People tend to see the black and white, but there's a lot of gray area in all this. So it's not just the health, it's not just the economy, it's both. We have to figure out a better balance, or the economy is completely going to collapse, and there's going to be mass company collapses and even worse unemployment than there already is. And again, we're approaching Great Depression type levels of unemployment in the United States. Again, the greatest economy in the world, potentially the greatest economy in world history. We are facing unemployment currently today that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. It's gotten weird very fast. And again, I'm laughing nervously. Just one of my personal habits, but it's probably going to get worse in the very short term. Again, I'm not seeing really anything. Retail sales are massively down. I think the numbers are 50%. Best Buy's laying off a ton of people. AMC is talking about bankruptcy. Expert is talking about how the airline should shut down because they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars per day. It's getting weird. Hey, Miss Scholl. Thanks for watching. Hi from Florida. I try to do these videos at least once or twice a week. I'm going to try to do a better schedule. Right now, as you know, I think you're still a teacher. Kids are doing online school, so we have to help our kids, our 2 oldest kids, with their online school, and I've got my business stuff that I'm doing. So I'm trying to work around that right now, but I'm going to try in the future to do them more on a regular schedule. For now, or in the past couple weeks, I've been doing them mostly on Thursdays because that's when the major unemployment news has come out. I'm doing this today on Wednesday because, frankly, all the important economic news that I just talked about earlier came out in the last couple days as companies have begun reporting earnings. Yes, Nick. Hope you and the family are doing good. I saw you recently had a baby. Congratulations. Yes, uncertain times, crazy times. Um, Again, studied an enormous amount of world history, financial history, and I'm reading a book from one of the smartest people in the finance world in the world right now, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I don't even claim to be as smart as most of these people like Ray Dalio and some of the other people, but I'm trying to just help you understand what's going on a little bit better, and that things aren't black and white, like just shutting off bank payments. Again, yes, banks should do that. If you lost your job, you shouldn't have to pay your mortgage. You shouldn't have to worry about being evicted. You shouldn't have to pay for your car payment. You shouldn't have to worry about getting repossessed. Right now, you shouldn't have to worry about that. I 100% agree with that. But again, if the banks aren't getting paid, the credit markets are going to tighten rapidly, and then the finance markets will just completely tighten. And then nobody will be able to get loans, nobody will be able to fund their businesses, stuff like that. So I hope this helps. Again, if you have any questions, let me know real quick.